This is the final episode of my new series where I attempt to cheat at Blackjack. I usually count cards on this channel, which is something casinos don't like but is legal. Cheating, however, is not. So instead of risking prison, we made our own fake casino, complete with me as the dealer, players, and most importantly, 3 real pit bosses who would oversee the game. Our job was to cheat without the pit bosses catching us. We tried to pull off one of the boldest, most ambitious cheating techniques that was actually done in casinos, and chaos ensued in ways none of us saw coming.
So I think we are honest with him. We take away the bags, we let him walk wherever he wants.
And then we just try it.
And we try it. And we go, all guns in.
I was nervous. I had no idea if what we were about to do would work. It would be my job to do the cheating technique. The players at the table were my accomplices, although they've got zero experience cheating. The first pit boss, Shownmi, had just been told to do his job as usual.
You would usually put it off center, corner by corner, yeah.
So it should be like this. He just thought we were making a video about Blackjack in the 80s, which is kind of true. We were making a video about cheating at Blackjack in the 80s. The cheating technique that we were seconds away from attempting is something that former professional card cheat Dustin Marks told me about. Dustin had been training me in sleight of hand for the previous episodes in this series, but the cheating technique that I was about to try would take way more in boldness than it would skill. In his book, Cheating at Blackjack, Dustin wrote about an incredibly high-risk, high-reward technique called the cooler. Dustin defines a cooler as a deck or decks of cards pre-arranged in a sequence that allows the cheaters to win every hand. The idea is to secretly switch the cards in play for a cooler so the cheats can win virtually every hand. Switching in one 6-deck cooler could net a cheating team literally millions in a matter of minutes. I'd spent time reverse engineering the perfect shoe. Provided my fellow cheaters played perfect basic strategy, they'd win a huge amount of money over the course of the shoe. But I needed players that could confidently play perfect basic. One mistake would knock the entire stack out of sequence, ruining the plan. So we put out a post on Instagram and Twitter/X to find 3 perfect basic strategy players from my audience. We had a training session to make sure my cooler actually worked, and we were all set. When Dustin was doing this technique for real in casinos, the switcher would have the cooler in a sling. A distraction would be created and the switcher would take the cooler out of the sling, put the cards on the table, take the cards off the table, put those in the sling, and then get the hell out of the casino. It sounds ludicrously impossible, but this was the 80s. The cameras were rarely recording, so if you could create a big enough distraction to steal the attention of the pit bosses and surveillance, you could get away with it. You can't rewind cameras that aren't recording. But it was very high risk. Cheating teams would often work with multiple turners, people that would distract pit bosses, other players, and just anyone else in the casino to pull this off. In our little studio, we didn't have the resources to do it like the real cheats, so we'd be cutting corners or cheating at cheating. I had 4 decks pre-stacked in a shoe of its own under the table, ready to switch. Just getting a shoe of cards in position under the table in a real casino would be like pulling off a heist of its own. Who knows if even doing that would have been possible. I'd also spent a little bit of time practicing the switch. What's the correct mechanic of doing a switch? Do I just pull that back? Is it literally just a case of going? But how much can you really practice taking something off a table and putting something else on a table? Switch. Wow. Switch. Wow. The last thing we'd done to stack the deck in our favour, pun absolutely intended, was stick some lighting stands and boxes in the way, forcing our pit bosses to stand in front of the table. We also had the players positioned so that there was a clear spot for the pit bosses to stand to give them the best view of the table, right where we wanted them. That's because a big component of this is the distraction. When this was done for real, a distraction would happen at the opposite side of the pit. Maybe a high roller would throw some cash on the table to buy in, or perhaps someone would start an argument. There's even stories of people jumping on a blackjack table just to create a big enough distraction. A distraction this big would hopefully cause the pit boss to turn around for long enough that the switch could be done. But we didn't have a casino. We had one table in a small studio. We didn't have the room to create the distraction behind the table, meaning we wouldn't be able to make the pit boss turn around. With the pit boss where we needed him, our distraction would happen directly behind him. Producer Cambria would be knocking a box of chips onto the floor. Hopefully the pit boss would completely turn around so he wouldn't see the table and I could do the switch. It's the same principle that was used in real life, just adjusted to work in our space. The other thing I was worried about is that it's hard to create a prolonged distraction. There's not a lot we could do that would go on for longer than a few seconds, so I'd have to be fast. But on the other hand, a studio is a more friendly environment. Naturally, the pit bosses wouldn't even think we were going to cheat. Their guard would be down. 3 pit bosses, 3 chances. There were many ways this could go wrong, but I wasn't prepared for the direction things would take. Back to our first pit boss. He was closely watching everything that was going on. He also asked to stand behind the table.
Is it possible to get some of these things out of the way? Because what I would usually be doing is rotating around and I would only whisper to the dealer.
But of course, we didn't let him.
I don't mind if you just talk to me over the...
Okay.
That's nice, but you can just talk to me.
We played out the last few hands of the shoe. After the shuffle, I'd load the cards into the shoe, give Cambria the signal, and do the switch. This was the moment. I really wanted this to work. I gave Cambria the signal.
All right.
Sorry. You know, I'm just leaving it. No, it's fine.
Absolutely gave me a heart attack.
He turned around, looked at Cambria, and in that moment, I'd done the switch. It was such a rush. I could tell that my fellow cheaters felt that sense of relief, that I can't believe this worked feeling. We played out the shoe. It was designed so that the first couple of rounds would be losers for the players.
Check for Blackjack. First one.
I thought it would help alleviate any suspicion that may have just been created. But then the shoe ramps up and the players started hammering the table.
Hey, Blackjack. There you go. Blackjack. 22. Table win. Although not too bad.
That'll do.
17, 20 wins, 19 wins, and 17 is a push.
Getting there.
To me. Right. This is the guy, I think. 15.
There we go.
21, very nice.
One of the hands I'd stacked is what I called the Mega Split. Is it dumb to say Mega Split? This is a round where the player at first base gets splittable hand after splittable hand with doubles galore. It was incredibly over the top and very unlikely to happen in a game. It was very bold, but I wanted us to have it. Luckily for us, although Shojon may have been concerned with that hand, he didn't say anything and the game continued. The shoe was pretty smooth. The only problem was at one point, one of the players did a basic strategy error. Luckily, another player advised a different play, correcting the mistake before it had any impact. With that shoe, our team of cheats had won a lot of money.
So the way that we cheated, we switched the entire shoe after the shuffle. We had Cambria knock over a box of chips, and at that moment...
Stephen, I'll be real with you. A distraction is something that I'm not familiar with. It wouldn't have happened in my casino, let's just say that.
Exactly.
From when I embarked on the table, shall we say, and started inspecting, I realized, okay, this is not running as professional, but I will guide as best as I can.
The next pit boss on our list had been in the industry much longer than the first one. He was a total expert. But even so, what we were doing would be impossible to pull off in this day and age. So it's unlikely that even with his decades of experience, he'd be on the lookout for something as bold as this. Remember, we didn't give the pit bosses any clues of what to look out for. He's American, and he just happened to be in the UK for the week that we were shooting, so we were really happy to have him involved. I'm actually not going to show you much footage of what happened next. I'll tell you why in a moment, but here's what happened. Much like the last pit boss, he immediately requested to stand behind the table, but we gave him an excuse as to why he couldn't. If this was a real casino, he would have insisted, but it wasn't, so he let it slide. He was very helpful at correcting my dealing procedures. It seems that my dealing really wasn't up to scratch. And I was impressed with how clearly this guy knew what he was doing. He was really on the ball, and I was convinced it wasn't going to work. We were going to have to get really, really lucky. I loaded the cards into the shoe, clapped to give Cambria the signal, and she knocked over the chips, causing a loud bang. The next 5 seconds were really interesting. Our pit boss initially ignored the noise, but then turned around for a fraction of a second. In that moment, I did the switch, but I was still moving the second shoe when he was turning back round. I didn't know if he'd seen it. It seemed like his instinct, as part of his training, was to ignore distractions and be focused on the table. But given that he knew it wasn't real money and we were just filming a video, he turned around probably to check if everyone was alright. A few seconds went by and I started dealing. I realised he hadn't seen it and we played out the shoe. Another huge win for the cheaters. When I sat down with him afterwards to debrief him, he became really unhappy with what had happened. I'm going to quote what he said. What you did was clever, but it wasn't realistic. I would never be inspecting a game from behind the players because somebody could tap me on my shoulder. I could get distracted. That's why you're in the pit, watching the game from inside. If you'd said to me at the start, treat this as a real casino, I'd be expecting something to happen, because it happens all the time. It seemed that he thought the whole situation was so unrealistic that it wasn't a fair representation. He thought we should just scrap the shoot and hire actors. He was also worried about the potential reputational damage from being in the video. The conversation continued. What was supposed to be just a 10-minute chat turned into well over 40 minutes. He was very polite, but requested, well, demanded, that we tear up the release form and destroy the footage. At one point, he even threatened us with legal action. Now obviously, I don't want anyone to look bad, and I really hope that's not what this video is doing. Nobody's been able to pull off this cheat in a casino in years. It's been patched. It simply can't be done now. Nobody's even trained to spot it anymore. I don't think it's at all fair to judge someone's professional standard based off something they haven't been trained to do, especially in this kind of environment. And I hope nobody watching this video will do that. We wanted to know if we could pull off this switch in an incredibly controlled environment, even though that gave us a huge advantage. But at the end of the day, he was really unhappy. So following his request, we cut him out of the video. All of this was happening while our third and final pit boss, Paul, was on set waiting. He was starting to wonder what was going on. He even mentioned cheating. Jamie, the director of photography, filled me in.
I don't know if there's a game plan, by the way, but I can give you a brief on him. He's hard work. Like, he immediately came behind. I had to stand there in front of the thing. He starts rearranging everything. I could foresee him not being happy with us blocking him. He's going to want to go behind. He's twice, if not 10 times more assertive than him.
This guy had immediately gone behind the table, rearranged chips, and inspected the cards. All while the stacked shoe was underneath the table. Jamie had managed to stand in the way of the shoe, so he hadn't seen it. But this guy seemed so sharp that pulling this off seemed like it was going to take a miracle. I was also now worried that he was going to be angry if we did manage it.
So I think we are honest with him. We take away the bags, we let him walk wherever he wants. And
then we just try it.
And we try it. And we go, all guns in.
The nerves went up when Cambria said she thought we should just let him walk everywhere. The thinking being that if the previous pit boss thought the whole thing was ridiculous because of restricted movement, maybe we should see what happened if we let Paul go anywhere. I remember thinking, there's no way this will work. If he can stand anywhere, he'll stand right next to me behind the table and he'll see me do the switch. The distraction happening in front of him means he won't have to turn and he'll see me do it. But we decided to try. If I thought my dealing was shoddy before, I was about to learn just how bad it was.
I see I've kind of messed it up again, but you rearranged my rack.
Paul was immediately correcting everything.
Start with, keep it in order.
From how I dealt the cards, to how I paid out bets, to how I picked up and handled the chips.
No, take
First
the money.
hand.
Take the money.
And then it's this hand first.
No. The reason for that. Keep
Oh, like
The
this.
reason for that. Put it back. Put it. No, I mean, sorry. Put it in the rack.
Yeah. Sorry. Bottle of water.
No, off the table.
He was in charge and I felt it. It felt like he was actually my boss and this was my first day on the job and I was doing everything wrong. And of course, he was stood right behind me. He hadn't seen the shoe, but there was no way it was going to work. What Paul did next changed everything. I put the cards in the shoe and just at that moment, he took one step away. He was right where we wanted him. I gave the signal, but I didn't need to. Cambria was already watching and waiting for the perfect time to knock the chips. She did it, and in that moment, Paul turned his head, I switched the shoe, and he turned back. Look at this timing. Look how quick his hand goes to defend that shoe. Unreal. They say it's better to be lucky than good, and damn, we were lucky. I don't think there's anyone in that room that thought we would actually pull it off, but it seemed like we had. He hadn't seen the switch, so we started playing the shoe. But if I thought we were in the clear, I couldn't be more wrong. Paul was giving me a crash course in everything dealing related. It was a lot to take in, but I was learning. At one point we discussed which card I should flip over as dealer.
Yeah, okay.
And you cover. Make sure that's covered.
That's covered so that there's...
So they can't read the card.
Whether I flip over the first card or the second. This affects what card will be showing, which affects how the players will play. Luckily, we agreed on it being the first card. But if he'd overruled me, it would have broken the stack immediately and we'd have had to abandon the whole plan. At one point to show me something, Paul asked me to deal an extra card to simulate if I'd done it by mistake.
Hit it again. Just hit it again. Just hit it again. Okay.
Then and there, it could have been all over. He was showing me how he'd handle a mistake like that. He gave the player at first base the option to have the card or have the shoes shuffled.
You can either use this or we'll shuffle again.
I'll use it. I've got no problem using it.
Okay, just keep it there.
He, obviously, chose the card. If Paul had just made me burn a card, like many casinos would have, it would have knocked the whole game out of sequence, breaking the stack. We played on and eventually hit the mega split hand.
Yeah.
1, 2, 1, 2,
8.
no low card. Face card,
12.
face card,
13.
Sorry.
face card.
But this is where Paul's instinct showed.
Shuffle, just shuffle.
Shuffle?
Yeah. After that, they might just say shuffle.
How come?
'Cause
Oh,
they-
really? Because is it like a superstitious thing, or they
In the
worried?
in the 80s, they'd come along and kick your feet, bang, shuffle, or or win.
I'm intrigued though. So is it like because they were running too good, so just in case?
They won every hand there.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And because we had that cock up with the card earlier,
Right,
right, they shuffle it.
got it.
Which is really what we should have done with that card earlier, but we were just playing around. You know, you resolve an issue.
Paul won, I shuffled, game over. Luckily for me, there was only a few hands left, so we still won as a table. But I found it fascinating that Paul didn't necessarily have a reason as to why he wanted me to shuffle. He just felt like it should be done. And this kind of instinct shows just how smart some pit bosses are. But now was the job I was absolutely dreading. Telling Paul what we'd done.
We did try and cheat in that game. So how do you feel about that? Do you feel, oh yeah, under these very specific circumstances, given this environment, yeah, okay, that could happen? Or do you feel sort of cheated that we've done that? Or do you think it was kind of...
No,
fair?
I think it's great. An experiment. Anything made by man is possibly cheated by man.
Yeah, you stopped that game midway because you just felt something was off. And I just thought that showed such unbelievably good instincts on your part.
I'm a little upset that I didn't catch it. I wasn't expecting to. I'm glad you told me it was a whole deck and not in a set in a shoe, because there's no way that could happen in current climate because of the chain. But these are things that have certainly happened. You get distracted, bang, that's all it takes. Like a magician.
Yeah.
And that's what we're watching for. But you wouldn't be on that game. You're not capable of dealing that game in a casino. So I'm watching something like this that wouldn't happen. It's interesting. It's a false environment.
Yeah, for sure.
But and that's it. I got caught.
I mean, I'm not confident that in a casino I would have got away with that in the 80s. I think I would have ended up in prison. But
No, you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
A lot worse than prison.
I then asked Paul for his opinion on the second pit boss's feelings.
So you obviously don't seem to think that it's been like a haha.
Yeah, but I'm not in the industry anymore.
Right.
Okay, so I don't give a
That makes sense.
I don't think it's necessarily correct, but it's a fair... I can empathise with him.
And perhaps that made him reconsider how he'd come across, because the next day he called Cambria and said he had additional thoughts. We arranged a call as I wanted to make sure he got to give his perspective.
The immediate thought was the next day that it was a flawed experiment. You were atrocious as a dealer. The rack was a mess. The old school pit bosses were very, very rough. And
For sure.
You wouldn't have lasted a minute on that game. I was more upset artistically as an actor because the truth of the situation just wasn't there.
In essence, 2 out of the 3 pit bosses thought that what we were doing was total BS.
It's a false environment.
It was hard to judge whether they just didn't want to look like we'd pulled one over on them, or if they were right. So was this cheat a success, or was it just too far removed from reality to prove anything? I'll let you be the judge. Something I think is interesting that none of the pit bosses realised is that I've been working out with Copilot. The clunkiest transition I've ever done into a sponsor? I think so, but I genuinely love Copilot. I've been using Copilot for nearly 2 years and it's totally changed my approach to fitness and exercise. Genuinely, this has to be one of the most game-changing services I use. In short, Copilot is a service that helps you reach your fitness goals with support from a real coach and a program designed to build consistency. Over 75% of Copilot clients continue to work out after 100 days, which means Copilot users are 9 times more likely to stick to their goals. Before I was using Copilot, I was working out, but I wasn't very consistent with my workouts. And my workouts weren't very balanced. I wasn't doing enough leg workouts, and there were muscle groups I thought I was working out properly, but wasn't. There wasn't a huge amount of variety in my workouts, and most importantly, I was seeing slow progress. A YouTuber I watched did a Copilot sponsor, so I decided to try it. The first thing that happened is that I chose a trainer based off my goals. I had a call with Mike where he asked me about my fitness journey so far and what I wanted to achieve. He then designed a personalized workout for me to use that fits my goals, the equipment I have at the gym, and the amount of times I want to work out a week and how long I want to work out for. The great thing about this is, and I cannot stress this enough, is that fitness is super complicated. There's a lot to it, and me just trying to design an effective workout for myself has always proved really tricky. I've never known if it's a well-rounded workout, if I've been working certain muscle groups enough, if the exercises I'm doing are the most effective ones. I've spent so much time Googling workout programs, but half the time they'll give me an exercise that requires a machine I don't have at the gym. They all require so much tweaking and altering just to get something usable. But Mike created this excellent workout for me, and I started doing it. The first session was challenging. Mike may have greatly overestimated me, but it was super straightforward to let Mike know, and he adjusted the workouts moving forward. Mike changes up my workouts just enough to keep them interesting, and if I ever need help with something, I can ask Mike and he's pretty speedy at replying. For example, even though there's a little Copilot person showing me how to do the exercise, I wasn't sure if my form was quite right. So I filmed a quick video of me doing the exercise and sent it to Mike, who sent me a video back telling me how to improve. The app itself has some really nice built-in features, such as telling me when I've hit a new personal best on an exercise, which is really motivating. I would genuinely rather use Copilot than have an actual physical personal trainer with me. For a start, it's way more affordable than hiring a trainer, but also I don't always work out at the same time. My schedule is all over the place, so I prefer to have the flexibility to turn up to the gym when it suits me. Whenever I'm off on a card counting trip, sometimes I don't have access to a gym. Or maybe I'll have a hotel gym, but it doesn't have much in the way of equipment. Well, in those cases, I send Mike photos of the gym and he'll design a workout for me based off the equipment that's available. Or if there's no gym, he'll create a really effective hotel workout. And it's based off the same goals I had previously, so it means when I'm back home, I don't feel like I've fallen behind. Speaking of how great Mike is, he regularly sends me motivational messages. Having Mike there to hold me accountable really helps. Now, I can't guarantee your trainer will be as cool as Mike is, but whoever your trainer is, they're building workouts to suit you. You decide what you want and they help you achieve it. The trainers will never shame, pressure, or judge you. They focus on what you can do today and build routines to improve your quality of life. Click my Copilot link to get a 14-day free trial with your own expert fitness and health coach.